Okay, now we're recording. So anybody watching, we have already completed the following videos. And I'll probably link this video also under week 2. So we've done the Hyper-V setup. We installed that our parent server, and then in this video we did the sysprep of it, and we created the 2 virtual machines off of that called Server 1 and Server 2. And now we're ready to deploy an Active Directory domain. There's the Active Directory domain of New Forest, because we're not joining anybody, plus these virtual machines are set to where they don't have any external network access. So we've accessed Server 1, right-click Server 1, connect to it, and go ahead and log in. Remember, pass 1234 was the login. In the previous video, we pre-installed the Active Directory role, the DNS role, and File Services role. And Server Manager pops up when we log into the system. Server Manager is like pretty much gray and blue, but you're being flagged. You've got some color on the screen, don't you? Where's the color at? Actually up here at the top bar, and it's right by a flag. It only means caution, right? Look here, something's here. If I click on it, what does it tell me? It recognizes that I've deployed the role service, Active Directory domain services, and it has not been configured yet. So it's saying, yep, you should probably click this little blue link here and deploy it. Prior versions of Windows Server, 2008 and 2003, 2000 Server, they had a command line tool that you had to run called DC Promo. They got rid of that in 2012. It doesn't exist anymore. Everything is done through Server Manager now. They did that because of the Windows 8 user interface they tried to throw on Server 2012. And you can't do anything with it. Everything has to be done through Server Manager. So go ahead and click the Promote this server to a domain controller link. And of course, you never want to do this deployment without first making sure the computer name is correct and the IP and time zone. The computer name is critical. Once you become a domain controller or there's some other services like a certificate authority, you do not want to change the name. You can change a domain server's name, but nothing works right from then on out. It's best to stand up a new one and just decommission that one and get rid of it if you try to change the name. So this dialog box comes up. We got a couple of questions here. We have 3 radio buttons.
So
Yes.
I don't usually do this.
So this here, we've got add a domain controller to an existing domain. That's by default selected, because that's probably the most common thing you would do, is you'd be adding a domain to help support, help alleviate workload for an existing company. We don't have an existing company. These virtual machines aren't even set to go to the internet or anything. So we're setting up a brand new company, brand new domain. So that's not an option we can choose. There's nothing we can join. Add a domain to an existing forest. Nothing exists yet. We can't do that either. Add a new forest. It's the most rare option you'd ever pick. You set up an Active Directory domain once for a company. If you set up Active Directory when Windows Server 2000 came out back in 1999, your company would just slowly upgrade from that point forward, and that you would have never done add a new forest again. So it's very rare. It's why it's at the bottom. Rarely would that ever be done. So we've got contoso.com, contoso.com. think there is actually a lab several weeks in that covers doing all of this and taking screenshots of it. But if you're doing it in class, it'll just auto grade you. If I can see from on your screens y'all are doing it. So I'm going to go next. But if you're taking it online or something, you'd have to take like screenshots showing that it was being done and submit to those assignments. Right now it's doing pings and broadcasts, trying to figure out if there's internet or any network out there that has Contoso.com, so that it doesn't make a mistake and try to set up over somebody. Now it comes up and going to show us what function level do you want to run. Yeah, force level and the main level function levels. We'll hit the drop downs and see what we've got. This is to allow you to be backwards compatible. If you know that you're going to implement an older version of server, you could select an older server level here. So if for some weird reason, because you're creating a new forest, you know that I'm going to set this up, but I'm also going to add in some old 2012 servers in here. I could select an older version to make it backwards compatible, but we're not going to mess with any of the older stuff, so we're going to put 2016. But that level right there, as you go throughout the decade, you'll have to, not in this screen, but other management tools, you'll have to upgrade that over time. You have to do some pretty big planning. Anytime you want to upgrade to a newer server version, you have to go read the deployment guide and see what type of extra stuff you have to do on the existing domain before you even deploy out a new server. A lot of times there's PowerShell scripts and stuff you got to run and prep the old domain to handle new servers. And then you put your new servers in place and you start migrating all of the data off of the old servers and let the new servers handle it, and then you start decommissioning the old servers, and once they're all gone, then you raise the function level. You have to have a domain controller. I'm at a DNS server, and you also have to have a global catalog running, so we'll leave both of those checked. Password. If you ever have to boot the system and the domain is so screwed up it can't run domain services, this is like a back-end local computer account. They can start it up into a disaster recovery mode. That's normally hitting having to restart the system into troubleshooting mode. That's the only way that this here would work. So we're going to use pass 1, 2, 3, 4. The big problem with this, that needs to be documented somewhere, because 6 years from now, when you got to disaster recover your server because something's gone wrong, what is that password? You can't change it either. There's probably you can probably look up some PowerShell scripts or something like that, back-end code to reset that. But normally that's never touched. There's no easy Windows interface to change that password. So that's done during installation. If you don't record that and put it somewhere and know how to find it, nobody knows how to log in and recover, and you really need that at that point in time. So we're going to go next. We don't need to worry anything about DNS. There's no internet. There's nothing above us. So we're going to go next. Again, it's double checking to make sure Contoso doesn't exist anywhere. It'll fill out the name in a second. Should just say Contoso. This is a NetBIOS name for older, like Windows 95, Windows NT4, that don't understand the domain name, like with the .com on the end. So that's why it doesn't have .com. This is really antiquated. Nobody really doesn't matter. So, but don't change it. Let's hit next. This is where it's going to store the database, log folders, and policies. So unless you're really going to be, say, like Walmart to National Guard, if you're going to have millions of objects inside of you may need to change this off a C drive and put it on another drive that's larger, faster capacity. But if you're only going to have a few thousand accounts and stuff out there, then probably the default is okay. But when you get into the millions, you need to do more research. So go next. Just a review of everything that's going to be done. At this point in time, there's also a PowerShell script that you can view. So that is the PowerShell script that would be run. If you had to do this to a lot of machines, you could actually copy the script and go in and do any modifications that might be unique to additional domain controllers, and then run the script. And not have to go click through the wizard. You just say run script and it would do it. Although we're creating a new forest, and it's just not something you would normally do, but you only do that once. So there's no point in copying that script. So we're going to go next. But that does kind of show you that everything is command line in the background. These are just graphic front ends, and that was the command that's actually going to be run in the background. Now it's checking everything, making sure we have hard disk space, network adapter, DNO, all the services are in place to install. So it gives me a couple exclamation points there. Some of them are security, like allowing cryptography compatible with NT 4.0. That should even probably be even this not allowed. NT 4.0 had some weak, that's back in the 90s. You actually want better security than that now, but it's basically stating that you can't have Windows 9X connect to you anymore, Windows 3.11, stuff like that. Hope you don't have that on your network. So click install. We have no red X's. We can click install. If you had a red X, you need to research that and fix the problem before you could deploy it. So I think the X is actually white and it's in a red circle. You can just call it a red X. So.
Just the red anyway.
Yeah, if you see red, it's normally a showstopper. These warnings are normally just warnings, especially that right there. It's like older systems can't communicate anymore. You see while it's starting, you have all this here: CN equals configuration, DC equals Contoso, DC equals .com. It's actually called an X.500 typeful name. It's that X.500 is actually a database structure that Novell NetWare, I think, helped develop. So they defined how the tree structure should work for a multinational global company, and how to organize user accounts and break things up inside of a database. So Microsoft did not really create this scheme. It was other engineers that formed the X.500 standard. And so, but Novell had the first tree structure, or one of the first companies had this tree structure out there. And Microsoft came around in the 2000s and did that. So when you're using Active Directory users and computers and you're seeing the user accounts and stuff, they're like I think they're like a CN equals user account name, and then the organizational units I talked about, they'd be like a comma, OU equals whatever name that is, and then the domain name, like Contoso, would be domain controller equals Contoso, and then the .com would be another comma, DC equals COM. So it all spreads out like that. You don't have to deal with those too often. If you are doing PowerShell scripts and stuff, you sometimes have to type it out like that, because PowerShell doesn't click graphical easy to look at stuff. It has to have the file path, or not a file path, but the Active Directory path in the list. When we get into PowerShell, we'll show you how to do that. It's always worked backwards. You go like into as far deep into the tree structure as you can, and that's where you start, and you work your way up all the way to the .com. It kind of seems like it's typed in backwards. Okay, so I'm going to start recording again after, what was that, about 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. It started up Active Directory. We got a Control-Alt-Delete, and we log into the server. Notice now it says Contoso /administrator. It doesn't just say administrator anymore, because it's a domain controller. There is no other accounts. We're logging into a domain. It's like you log into the asub.edu domain into these computers on campus. Now we're logging into Active Directory. So we had pass 1, 2, 3, 4. We will log in. Server manager will start up. It'll still look pretty much the same, but we are a domain controller now. So local users and groups have went away. I can show you that pretty quickly. We still have the other server that we haven't promoted yet, so this is a good time to show that. So right-clicking on the Start menu, and I'll go to Computer Management. If you want to, you can follow along, or you can just watch up here at the screen. Computer Management will come up. Same Computer Management that's in Windows. Now my host computer is not a domain controller. Also, Server 2 is not a domain controller yet. So I can look at Computer Management on my host computer and put them side by side. You can see the difference. So I'll put them side by side. So this one here on the right side is a computer that is not a domain controller. It has local users and groups. The domain controller does not have local users and groups because all the accounts are stored in a SQL database called the Active Directory Domain Services. That's one way to tell if you're a domain controller or not, is do you have local users and groups in computer management? So, no, we don't. We can look at our Active Directory. There's two ways. The Administrative Center is new, but I don't like the color scheme of it, so I don't go in there too often. I'll show you some tools in here that you don't have under Users and Computers that would be good to turn on. I'm going to go under Users and Computers. Is that the fifth one down? And it will show our Active Directory, our Contoso that we created. So we see Contoso. I'll open it up. It has a bunch of built-in items, pre-built-in security groups and user accounts and stuff. It's really good to try to utilize these if possible. It gives a description of what they have permission to do. Under users, you have more groups. You only really have one user account now. It's administrator. But again, and these other groups here have information on what they can do. So if you need to apply permissions to somebody, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Microsoft may already have it out there for you. We'll talk about that later on. Our domain controller is our server. Our network is not very large. It has one user, and it has the domain controller, but we have no computers. It's actually bad to have computers in the computer folder, but I'll talk about that at a later time. We get into something called group policy at the end of the semester. We also start off with that in LAN 2. Is why you don't want to use some of these items. So y'all should feel pretty cool. Let's fix a thing that it messes up when you promote the server. It messes up the DNS entries on your Ethernet adapter. So I'm going to click local server here on the left side. I'm going to check my Ethernet adapter and go under properties. Click on IP version 4, go to properties, and I notice my DNS settings changed. I replaced it with localhost, which kind of okay. It's pointing back to itself, and it is the DNS server, but I'm going to put the, let's see, oops, 192.168.1.1, and it also took away our secondary one. That one doesn't exist yet. That's server 2 that we're going to promote later on. I don't think we'll have time to promote it today. We'll probably have time to join it today. I've got about 11 minutes left in class. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK after fixing the DNS. Make sure you put 1.1 out there, because we've got LAN 2 running on the other subnet 0.1, so don't ever use a 0 in that middle octet. If you're at home, it wouldn't really matter unless you had other systems running. But my LAN 2 class was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We picked the .0 network. Okay, I'm going to go to server 2 in the Hyper-V window, connect to it, and it was already logged in. Cool. I'm not going to promote it right now. I'm actually going to join it to Gatosa.com first, just to make sure that it can connect and communicate. I don't have to. I could run the wizard and do the join and everything all in one fell step, but I'm going to make sure I can connect to it first. So I'm going to click this work group under local server, and right under server 2 it says work group. I'll click that. I'll click change. I'll click on domain, and I'll put Contoso.com. Now I have run into a few instances in the past setting up, 50 computers on a domain. For some reason, 49 of them required it to be spelled completely out, like asub.edu. One computer would not accept it. It would only accept ASUB. So here, if it doesn't work, you could take off the .com and just leave Contoso and see if it worked. But most of the time, put the whole thing out there. It's rare now that it would not accept that anymore, but there is some cases where it may not work, and you can try it without the .com or the .edu or whatever ending it is. Click OK. You should ask for administrator in pass 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice this is going to be the administrator account in Contoso. We're asking, we got to use the domain, not a local account. Local account doesn't have rights to an Active Directory domain. So this would be an account that's in the domain that we're using. So click OK. It should communicate. We cross our fingers, and we should have a welcome. I'm going to hit OK several times and close and do a restart. So if we didn't join a domain, that's a really good test if our network connectivity is good enough to actually promote it into a domain controller. I think I'm just going to go ahead and restart anyway. Mine came back up. When I log in, it's not a domain controller. So when I do the Control-Alt-Delete up here, it's trying to log in as the local administrator account still. It's not something you'd want to probably do anymore, since it is a member of a domain. Even on workstations, after you join a workstation to the domain, it'll try to log into that built-in user account that's used to set up Windows for the first time. So after the first time you've joined a computer, you have to click Other User. And notice it says Sign Into, and it has Contoso.com at the bottom. But watch as I type Administrator. As soon as I correctly spell it, it changes to try to sign in local again. So I have to put at Contoso.com. Windows put that as a safety measure, thinking that you probably don't have domain credentials, that the regular user is probably trying to sit down, and if the top administrator, it's not going to attempt to log in. I think that's kind of bad. I don't know why. I don't see how that would be any type of security help or not, but when you log in as an administrator, you always have to put the @ symbol. Whether you're on a Windows 10 machine, Windows 7, whatever, you have to fill it all the way out as an email. And then we log in, pass 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll be logged into the domain as a domain admin. Domain admin would allow us to control other computers and other servers. If we left it just administrator, we'd be local, and we'd only be able to mess with the local. We couldn't communicate to any other server or computer on the network. That local account, what it means, local to that one machine. Server manager will start, but I'm just going to close this window out and just let server manager start in the background. I'm going to go back to server 1, and this is where they talk about centralized administration and total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership goes down if you can centrally administer a network. If you could sit in your office on a Windows 10 machine and manage all of the servers in one spot, you can get work done a lot faster, either by using graphical wizards or PowerShell scripting stuff. So I'm going to use server 1 as my management point, since I don't have a Windows 10 or anything like that yet. I'm going to go to manage, and I'm going to add a server. So I can add a server into server manager and be able to manage it in one spot instead of having to go or remote desktop or physically go to something. I don't have many systems, so I can just click find now and it'll find everything. If you did that at UAMS, you'd probably sit there for an hour and a half and then it would list 28,000 objects that you would have to try to filter through. So server 2 is what we're wanting to connect to. I hit the little right arrow key. So I could, if there's multiple, I could select all the servers I needed to manage, put them over here on the right side, and hit OK. I now notice there's a new exclamation point at the top, and it says, hey, server 2 has Active Directory domain services, and it's not configured yet. So I don't have to be on server 2. I just added it in. We don't have enough time to do that today. I can look over here on the left side and look at all servers. I can see server 1 and server 2 in the list. I can right click and launch administration tools to manage server 2. Sometimes you just have to hit refresh again and we'll go away. So look, I remotely connected to a command shell on server 2 just by right clicking and saying open PowerShell. I'm not going to do anything right there for PowerShell. We'll get into that soon enough. But that's central administration. I don't have to hop from server to server or remote desktop into different places. I just log into one, join them all to this one pane, and do almost everything through Server Manager on all the servers. So that's their end of class. On next week, we will go into server 1 and promote server 2 as a domain controller from server 1. You'll be big, cool central admin. Bring your big admin hat that day. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video right at 30-minute mark.